so excited that you've joined us for another episode of Meet My Mississippi Authors and Artists. Today we have another author with us with that long literary history of great writers in Mississippi. And who do we have here today?
Merle Temple from Tupelo. Originally lived down near Nettleton, and happy to be here. Happy to see you again.
Yes. I usually start my interviews kind of going back to where we first met each other personally for the first time. I think it was you had a authors thing for Gumtree Festival. You did an author symposium, kind of like a whole author group fair. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I actually met you before that. Actually.
Oh, where did we meet?
Weren't you at the Arthur Rodeo in Senatobia?
Yes. Okay. Was that before that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So many events. Hard to keep up with.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, the Arthur Rodeo in Senatobia.
Yeah, Northwest.
Northwest. Okay. And then we met. You organized a thing for the authors during the Gumtree Festival.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we were so far down on the other side of the street from the Gumtree, but still we got a lot of people. It was a success. I thought it was a success.
Well, it wasn't quite what we hoped it would be, but you never know.
Exactly. And you're always at a lot of the Elvis events and all kinds of things. You're everywhere. And we love in the schools, and you're in Florida with your book and just everywhere. We love that. Yeah. So, again, tell us your background of what you did before you really started getting into this writing thing.
Well, my books are 5 now in the Michael Parker series, and they're written as fiction, but they're drawn from my life, my tumultuous life, and Michael Parker in the books is really based on me. And truth is stranger than fiction, and that's certainly true in my case, because so much has happened to me in my life, good, bad, ugly, and tragic. It's all in the books. From my time in law enforcement and the first drug wars as an agent in the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics, held hostage, ambushed, lured out near Memphis to be assassinated, fought corrupt politicians all the way from Jackson to the White House. I know that shocks you to know they're corrupt politicians. And, just things I encountered in the bureau days and the corporate world and the political worlds and campaigns I was involved in, and what I call the unholy trinity of politics, crime, and business.
And we see on Facebook a lot of your pictures of the big high people that you come across in government and pictures you've taken, and we love that to get the history of where you came from with that.
Yeah, everybody tells me, I said, you're like Forrest Gump.
Right. If you name a person, you've been there, done that. It's like you have an association somewhere in it. I love that.
Well, life is like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get.
Well, I'm telling you, with your life, I mean, you come up with something every day. I'm like, oh, was he there? My goodness, he knew that person. He touched that person.
Yeah, it's a theory about so many degrees of separation in the world.
From Merle Temple.
If you talk to somebody long enough,
you can find that
you'll
connection.
find it's like, you were at that concert in 1979. I was too. You were on the 4th row. I was too.
Right.
You keep on, and it's a small world after all. And,
absolutely.
But the books have been really well received. The Ghost of Shade of Pale, which actually was the first book written. Now it's 3rd in the timeline. Now there have been 2 prequels written, but it became the all-time best-selling novel in the Barnes and Noble store in Tupelo.
Right.
And then we. Became the all-time best-selling author for the Lifeway store in Tupelo, which is now closing, which is breaking my heart and a lot of hearts.
And I love that because you're there a lot, and you just get to greet the people who come in and sign the books and all that. I love that when you posted that on Facebook. Just being there with the people and talking to them and seeing them. I love it.
We hear so many tragic stories, so many testimonies about how God has saved their lives, and a lot of tears in that store, and a lot of prayers, and it's really it's going to leave a big void in Tupelo.
Every time I look over there, I'm like, why are they leaving? The good things are leaving. That store's been there forever. I mean, oh my goodness, we're just. So tell us about ICC. You got the freshmen, you got the thing where the freshmen read the Ghostly Shade of Pale, or they read it?
Yeah, still our largest single sale. Right. I think we sold 500 books to ICC and got to meet all the students and speak to them and sign. That's still my favorite thing to do, be it students of any age, is to go out and talk with them and try to tell them about my life, try to get to them before they're bent too far in the wrong direction. Share what I learned often the hard way in life about who and what never mattered in life and who and what always will. And so there are high schools, middle schools, and colleges all around using my books. And if any English teachers see this broadcast, please contact me, and I'll tell you how we can get some books in there in Deputy, which is now the first in the timeline. It's a prequel to Ghostly, about my time as a deputy sheriff in Lee County a long, long time ago. It's been used by Mississippi State. It's now being used by a college in Ohio, and the English professor up there, who coincidentally is the mother of Nancy Grace, who used to be on CNN.
Wonderful.
She has written a wonderful study guide, and we'll give it free to teachers for their use with students, and it is first rate.
Okay, well, how do they get that? Is that on your website, or they call you, or go to your website, or what? How would they get the study guide for that?
Just send me an email at Merle Temple, MERLETEMPLE, at bellsouth.net, and they can check out the books at merletemple.com on my website.
Okay.
But we'll be glad to do that. Come speak and give great deals on class sets. We like to seed books in as many schools as we can, and I've talked to thousands of students now.
All over the place, not just Mississippi. I mean, you're in Florida, here and there and everywhere.
Yeah,
it's love that.
Yeah, it's been we've been well received, and everybody's been really gracious. And a teacher who was using A Ghostly Shade of Pale in Destin Middle School came to a book signing in Florida, and she said, "I've moved to Niceville, Florida now, to the big high school. I'm teaching senior English." I said, "Oh, great." And she said, "Well, I've got the students reading To Kill a Mockingbird."
Okay.
And I said, "Wow, that's a great book." She said, "I thought you'd like to know that Deputy is a companion read."
Okay.
And I said, "Whoa!" I said, "I can't even go there." You know?
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
So tell us a little bit about A Ghostly Shade of Pale. Where it's set, the whole thing, and how the schools can use it, how the teachers can use it. What are the messages in the book?
Well, these are all these books are written as literature, and they don't contain any of the bad language or the salacious things that people like to layer up their books with these days. They're like novels used to be, novels I grew up on, and so there's always it exposes readers to the reality of the world, things that I saw, the darkness in the world. But also it always has a thread of hope in the books. It's uplifting, and they're uplifting and edifying. And people write me all the time and tell me that they have read the books more than once. A lady from Georgia recently wrote me and told me, she said, "I'm reading your books again." And I said, "Oh, well, thanks." And she said, "No, this is the 5th time. There's so much in the books. They're not light reads. And not skim through it. I know this plot. I've seen it 100 times before. You blow through it and then throw it in a waste can.
Not this. They're layers and layers in
there. They make you think and hopefully point you toward the cross too, because this is also my ministry. And they just brought it Lifeway. They brought a man who just got out of prison in Texarkana, federal prison. He wanted to meet me, and he came with some Christians there at Lifeway, and he was kind of nervous, and he said, "I just want you to know your books are in Texarkana prison. They're worn out from men reading them."
Wow.
And he said, "They've done a lot of good," and he said, "I took one to the head of one of the worst gangs there, very violent people. I won't name the group, but they're very violent, and he said he took his life in his hands to take the books to this man. The man came to him after he'd read half of it, very angry, threatening him right up in his face. And he told him, "This can't be true." He said, "God can't love me like he loves Michael in the books. He can't protect me like he did Michael in the books." And he said, "He can, and he does love you." And he said, "I thought he was going to kill me." He said he left. He said he finished the books. He accepted Christ. He left this violent gang, they beat him and stabbed him because you don't leave that gang once you're in, but he survived. He said the last we heard of him, he was transferred to another prison, and he was leading Bible studies built around your book.
Oh my goodness.
And that's what this is all about, because a lot of people who will never pick up a Bible, never go to church, will pick up these shoot 'em up tales from my life. They're exciting, and Criminal Minds in Hollywood liked them and called me to Hollywood. And then they get ambushed by the Holy Spirit when they read these books. And so we've been accepted in Christian circles and the secular circles too, because Criminal Minds, the popular TV show in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to. Now, how did that all come about? That they were kind of optioning it for a movie, or wanted to do some things, or thinking about a script or whatever.
Yeah, well, it was very exciting, and but I knew. I had a friend who was a cousin of Jim Clemente, and Jim, the Criminal Minds is based on his life. He was a top FBI profiler and a first responder at Ground Zero, and later got sick from that and retired early and went to Hollywood after he'd helped him set up the TV show Criminal Minds. Became their advisor and writer, and then later producer. And so I wrote Jim and said, I know your cousin. And I said, could you read this and tell me if it's any good, if I should do humanity a favor and burn all copies in a midnight ceremony or something? And he said, sure, I'll get with it as soon as I can. We're really busy. And he later in an interview said, oh no, not one of these, another one of these, I know you're a family member, could you read it? And he said, we get so many of those and they're awful. And I waited and waited, and finally one day it popped up in my email in my inbox, and I was afraid to open it. I figured he's going to say, why'd you waste my time on this dribble and didn't give up your day job, did you? And he said, I'm sorry it's taken so long, I've been really busy. He said, I'm not quite finished, but I had to stop and write and tell you, you're not only a great writer, you're a great writer of American literature. That's what this is, a big crime stories literature. He said, come to Hollywood, I want to represent you.
Wow.
So we loaded up in Tupelo and headed out I-40 and to Beverly.
Loaded up the truck.
Yeah, swimming pools and movie stars, and all we needed was Granny up on top in a rocking chair. And Beverly, I told my wife when we got out there, we were driving through Beverly Hills. I looked at Judy. I said, Judy, we are the Beverly Hillbillies. And so we signed for the cast of Criminal Minds and Major Crimes, and did radio and TV interviews out there. Met with producers, and had a big book signing in the edge of L.A.
That's exciting.
And signed more books at that Lifeway store, which my friend in Tupelo set up for us, even though no one knew us. We signed more books at that store than anyone ever had except Charles Stanley.
Oh my goodness.
And Brother Stanley's been on TV for like 60 years.
Wow, yes.
And so it's a good company to be in. And so we signed a contract later with XG Productions, and which Jim is president of, and they've had some big series and programs they've done for TV, and have been very successful. And XG stands actually for ex-G-Men.
Okay.
And they're all former federal agents.
Okay.
And who've made it big in Hollywood and trading their stories and telling their stories, kind of like I do.
Right.
And except mine is a ministry. But so they've been pitching it. We've been very close to a TV series, time or two, and then it'll cool off. But that's the way it is in Hollywood.
Yes.
And so when I went to Hollywood, they really didn't know what to make of me. I don't think they'd ever met a Christian from Mississippi before. And when they found out that I wouldn't sell my soul to the highest bidder, they're like, we've never met anyone like you before in Hollywood. And they looked at me like Scotty had just beamed me down from a Starship Enterprise. But we met a lot of nice people too, and even the ones who weren't believers liked the writing. And that was God's plan all along. And so the books now are in shelters and prisons and libraries, and resellers are selling them over and over around the country and around the world. And I do radio and TV interviews, and I tell my friends, don't feel bad if you have to sell the books to some of these resellers, thrift books and so on, or to donate them. I said, because you're spreading the gospel. It's not going to hurt my feeling. I want people to read the books.
Right.
That's the whole purpose
and that's
of
every
it.
author. They just want the books out there. Really, they really want their message, whatever it is, out there.
And so the reviews have been good, Christian and secular. And when Beverly Hills, when I was interviewed, at the end, the host, it was a great interview, and Mel Gibson's son mic'd me and powdered my big shiny head, and signed one for his dad. And but at the end, the host said, well, kind of gritted her teeth. She said, well, it's Christian. She said, but you got to get it. The writing's so good. And I went, yes. And so we've just been blessed and received very well here and there, and just can't wait to see what God has waiting for us around the next bend. This book's kind of like a modern day Pilgrim's Progress for people who've read that classic. It's one man's journey to God, and all the things that happens to him happened to me along the way. And truth is stranger than fiction, as I said. And some of this you just won't believe. And most people, when they meet me, if they read all 5 books, they said, I have 2 questions. They said, number 1, how are you still alive?
Right.
And number 2, you must be 150 for all this to happen to one person.
Things, my goodness.
And I said, well, there's some days I feel like I'm 150.
So now tell us some of the places and locations in a Ghostly Shade of Pale, like some of the drug things. Where are the locations, the settings of some of them?
Well, these books are novels of the South, but Ghostly Shade of Pale takes place in Mississippi. We were ambushed in Columbus.
Okay.
I was lured out near Horn Lake
to
be assassinated by 2 hitmen. And down near Tylertown, down south, I was where I was held hostage when I was working undercover, and just here and there, Starkville, Tupelo, all around places that people would recognize.
Right,
and most people early on who read the books would write me or call me and say, I know who this character really was.
They think they do.
Yeah, because I changed the names to protect the innocent and the guilty early on. And Alan Nunley, our congressman who passed away, he read Ghostly on the plane back to Washington. And he said, I know who this corrupt politician was, and so on. And we get that a lot.
Okay, now tell us about Deputy a little bit. Tell us a little bit about this whole thing of Deputy.
Excuse me.
I love that cover. I love all your covers. This one I really fell in love with the colors I love, and then I just love Deputy.
Well, Deputy, I don't usually use real pictures. I couldn't resist it on the cover of Deputy. I have a picture of me standing by a patrol car in Tupelo about, I think it was right 1971 when that was made. And I was interning with them out of Ole Miss before I graduated and went to Bureau of Narcotics. Excuse me. And so it's all about the life of a deputy sheriff, and Jim Johnson in Lee County endorsed the book, and that was a big help to us locally. And it's all about that, and a lot of interesting people show up and in the book. And Elvis came down 8 days after meeting with Nixon. His picture's on the back with my sheriff, Bill Mitchell. He came down to get his badge because when he was young and not famous, he used to sit in with Bill and his band because Bill was a champion fiddle player. And so he came down to get his badge 8 days after meeting with Nixon in the White House in that famous meeting. So the inside story of that is in there too. And
Be Still My Heart, everybody knows what a big Elvis fan I am.
Yeah, well, it was, he was very nice, and it was 4 days after Christmas, and he bought food for everybody, including the inmates in the jail, and a very nice man.
Wonderful. Okay, now tell us a little about Blood on the Ground.
Well, Blood on the Ground is another prequel that now comes after Deputy in the timeline, a prequel. Both of them are prequels, Deputy and Blood on the Ground, to Ghostly Shade of Pale. But Blood on the Ground was things I didn't have room really a space to tell in the Ghostly Shade of Pale, and it's all undercover. When I was undercover in the Bureau of Narcotics, and people can read, there's so much in Blood on the Ground, and I wanted to write it to show kind of how we got to where we are now in this country, because I told somebody I should have subtitled it to all the communists I've known before, like the old song, to all the girls I've known. And but we met a lot of people, and they weren't just drug dealers. Some of them were revolutionaries, hated America, wanted to bring down America and usher in communism. And some of them leaked my name to underground newspapers. And one time during the midst of a drug deal, when I was counting money out on the table down south of Starkville, and I was counting money out, the drug dealer said, "Oh man, I've got to warn you about this guy." I said, "Oh yeah, who's that?" He said, "Well, he's hurting a lot of people." And I said, "What's his name?" He said, "Merle Temple." And I almost stopped counting.
Oh my goodness.
And I said, but I forced myself to go, and I said, "What does he look like?" And he described me to a T, and then described the car, which was right over my shoulder out the open front door. But I think that I was lucky fortunate that I think he was probably into his own wares and might not have been thinking too clearly.
Right.
But when I left that day, I told him, I said, when I left, I said, well, I'll be on the lookout for him and I'll take care of him if I see him. And but when I got back to Jackson, I said, I need a new look and I need a new car.
Right.
And but I kind of explained that, and it's a deep descent into the underworld that we went into that honestly we weren't prepared for. College, criminal justice courses, while they were very good, they didn't prepare us for what we were going into, because we grew up in an age when it was just a different world, and now we went into a world where all the rules were broken, and it was just a buffet of forbidden fruits laid out before everyone. And sometimes some of the young and innocent guys that came in there, it messed up their heads. And but thank the Lord that didn't happen to me then. But it was, like I said, something we just weren't prepared for. But made great friends in those days. And the ones who are no longer with us, they live again. In my memory, when I write these books, because I write from memory, and I try to honor their memory and the people that they were, and the things they did that for people that folks may never know about unless we write about it.
That's wonderful. I love that. So you have how many books? Now say it again. How many books do you have, and what's the first and what's the last one?
Well, now in the timeline, we have 5 books in the timeline. It's Deputy, Blood on the Ground, A Ghostly Shade of Pale, A Rented World, and then The Redeemed, A Leap of Faith. And that's where it all comes home in the end. And so people keep asking me to write, and they said, "Are you writing?" "We're waiting."
Right.
And Blood on the Ground's only been out less than a year.
Right, but they're like, well,
and I said, well, I've got to market, and plus had a few health issues I had to deal with too, but I have to market, and we do a lot of radio and TV interviews. Many now I can do from home via Skype.
All right.
And I can speak to people around the world, and we get the nicest letters and notes from people all over the world who've read the books, write to say what they meant to them, how it changed their lives in many cases, and just when I get feeling weary, now that I'm 71, God will send somebody to me who will tell me something that
spark that engine again.
It starts it up again, and I say, yeah, I can't wait to get out. And I got up one morning, and my computer was on, and I never leave my computer on, and then Facebook was open, and I never leave Facebook open. I couldn't imagine what had happened, and the private message box was open on Facebook. I leaned over, rubbing the sleep out of my eyes, and said, "What is this?" I said, "Maybe it's somebody who's read the books. I could use a good word today." And I leaned over, and this lady said, "I don't know if you remember me or not." She said, "But 40 years ago, you arrested my husband."
Wow.
And I went, "Uh-oh, this might not be too good." And I was scratching my head and said, "Oh, yeah, I do remember." I said, "How's he doing?" And she said, "Well, he's gone now, but he was finally sober the last 2 years of his life."
Wow.
And I said, "I'm so sorry." And she said, "Well," those were hard times, and with his drug trafficking and so on. And she said, I was in nursing school at MSCW in Columbus, and she said they thought that I was involved in these drug trafficking, bring bad press on the school, and they were going to kick me out of nursing school. And she said, but you were so kind to me, and it's beginning to really come back to me now. And she said, you were so kind to me. You called the school and told them that I was not involved. That was a good person, and to leave me alone.
Wow.
And she said, you know, I went on to be a good, caring nurse to people for 40 years, and I just wanted to tell you this morning that I owe you my life.
Oh my goodness.
I sat there and cried like a baby.
Oh my goodness.
And as I
if
said,
that doesn't spur you on, nothing will.
yeah, as I said on the worldwide broadcast one night, I said, I'm not ashamed to admit it. And I said, because real men cry for Jesus.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest, and tell the readers again your website, web address, way they can get in contact with you and everything.
Well, if you want to send me an email, it's Merle Temple, MERLE TEMPLE at bellsouth.net, or merletemple.com is a website. And we always say when I'm out on the road, people say, what is your name again? And I say, it's Merle like Haggard and Temple like Shirley. And all the young people say, who are they?
I know, don't you hate it? I know, oh my goodness. Well, get in contact with him. They're great for schools. They're great for all ages. Perfect. Again, thank you all for tuning in to Meet My Mississippi authors and artists. And I know the coolest people, so y'all better come back and see some more.
Rocking chairs in front yard swings, hot cornbread and turnip greens, coleslaw and barbecue, watermelons on the vine for me and you. It's falling in love at the county fair. It's inside me, girl, it's in the air. It's who I am through and through. It won't take long till it gets to you. It's everywhere. Mississippi magic is sweet molasses breeze. God, country, family, that's what it means.